McGovern for any remarks he wishes to make.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think Hillary Clinton says it takes a village. I say it takes a bigger room. I don't know if any more people in this room, but thank you. Look, this is not a happy day. We are less than a week from default, and we've been rushed back to Washington to vote on a deal, all because Republicans wanted to push their luck and play games with the debt limit. Frankly, we should not be here. We should have taken care of this months ago. This represents an all-time high in recklessness and stupidity, quite frankly. And let me just point out the obvious here. Every time Republicans are in charge, they screw things up. The last time Republicans held a majority, we ended up with the longest government shutdown in United States history. Now, here we are today, this time dealing with a totally manufactured crisis that risks the full faith and credit of the United States. Both then and now, Democrats have had to be the adults in the room to come in and clean up their mess. Republicans are unfit to govern. I thank President Biden for his leadership throughout negotiations. This bill could have been a lot more awful than it is. One thing I do know is that I didn't come to Congress to hurt people. And when I listen to my Republican friends, what is clear to me is that we don't share the same values. You know, I'm a Democrat. Got my first job in politics as a paid intern with Senator George McGovern. Great last name, no relation. And I'm still inspired by that experience to this day. You know, when he talked about the Democratic Party, he said what unites us is our desire to propel our great country onward by meeting the needs of the many, not the few. And a bedrock principle for Democrats is that we bring everyone along. And that's not what we're doing here today. And I have some very real, very serious reservations about this bill. My Republican friends just discovered how committed they are to fiscal responsibility. So committed that they've held the global economy hostage for months so that they can force spending cuts that they could not pass through a regular order. Some of the things that they are pushing couldn't pass the House and couldn't pass the Senate, never mind get a presidential signature on their own merits. They bullied their way to this moment. They didn't seem to be so bothered by the deficit when Trump was in office, when they added over $2 trillion to the debt for tax cuts for billionaires. They're only ever really worried about spending when a Democrat is in the White House. If we're genuinely interested in dealing with our deficit, then let's have that debate. We can make sure that the wealthy and the well-connected pay their fair share. We could close tax loopholes that millionaires and billionaires exploit. This bill does the opposite. It drastically cuts the IRS funding that would have kept big corporations in the top 1% in check. Or what about the military budget? Anyone see the piece on 60 Minutes a couple of weekends ago? A former Pentagon official went on and told the world about the price gouging that takes place at the Pentagon on a regular basis. He told us that the Pentagon overpays for almost everything. In one example, the Pentagon paid $10,000 for a $300 oil switch. Now, I know my Republican friends and even some of my Democratic friends claim that reducing military spending would somehow undercut our national security. Well, you know what? We need a new definition of national security in this country, one that requires a tough but lean military budget. But that is not just about bullets and bombs. Our national security must be measured by the prosperity of our people, by whether our families have enough money to buy groceries, and whether we're investing in our schools, our libraries, and our roads and our transportation systems. National security includes the cleanliness of our air and the purity of our water. It includes adequate support for our veterans, for our seniors, and for our children, and all the things that strengthen our communities. If we continue failing to invest in our people, what kind of country will be left for our military to defend 20, 40, or 60 years down the road? But we're hearing from the Republicans, don't look there. We can't find any savings from the bloated military budget. Really? And we can't make the richest corporations pay their fair share in order to get our fiscal house in order. We have some of the wealthiest corporations on the entire planet that pay little to no taxes. They should at least pay the rate of what their lowest paying workers pay. Instead, we have to cut funding that helps the most vulnerable in our country. Give me a goddamn break. Now, I appreciate the Biden administration secured provisions to expand benefits to help some hungry people, like veterans, kids emerging from foster care, and housing insecure people. Thank God he's in office and not Trump. But improving benefits for some does not justify putting 700,000 older adults at risk of losing critical life-saving food benefits. Food and hunger should not be a partisan issue. It's a human issue. And we have over 30 million people in this country who don't know where their next meal will come from. And this current SNAP benefit is on average $6 per person per day. That's $2 per meal. And the majority of people on SNAP who can work, they actually do work. And we also know, by the way, that work requirements don't work. A February 2023 study found that work requirements of SNAP cause a 53% overall reduction in program participation among adults subject to work requirements. Importantly, the paper found these requirements have no effect on employment. A June 2021 research report found no evidence that the ABOD time limit substantially increases employment. And a February 2021 article entitled "The Effects of Changing SNAP Work Requirements on the Health and Employment Outcomes of Able-Bodied Adults Without Dependents," exactly what we're talking about today in this bill. They reported that losing SNAP made people less healthy and had no significant change in employment status. And by the way, my Republican colleagues, for all their talk about this, have held no hearings on this issue. Not one. I actually sit on the Agriculture Committee. I sit on the Nutrition Subcommittee. Not one hearing on this stuff. We're almost in June. Feel so strongly about this stuff? And no hearings? No need to make sure that people who don't want to lose their benefits are protected? So putting aside all of that, Republicans think the way we should get our budgetary house in order is by going after vulnerable people. I don't know what the hell is wrong with them, but that is where what this bill is all about. Make no mistake, these adjustments will make older, poorer Americans hungrier, full stop. I also have issues with the anti-environmental language in the deal. This bill slashes key NEPA protections, approves the Mountain Valley Pipeline, and doesn't include transmission reform. And we all knew that there would be concessions and compromises. As I said earlier, some of my friends are still withholding support because they believe that this bill doesn't go far enough, that it doesn't hurt people enough, which is outrageous to me. But by weaponizing the debt ceiling, Republicans are establishing a precedent that will haunt us forever, that one party can use the full faith and credit of the United States as a hostage to pass their wildly unpopular ideas. But someday, hopefully not in my lifetime, but someday there will be a Republican president. And you will remember this moment, because what you are trying to do is get things enacted that you could not get done through regular order. It is a lousy, lousy way to govern. Now, this will be a long afternoon, and I'm sure many of our members will have much to say. People will have to decide in the next several hours how they will ultimately vote on this package. But let me end as I began. This is not a happy day. And with that, I yield back.
Without objection,